So I recently visited Saab during a research and filming trip over in Sweden, and they gave me exclusive access to a Gripen CD. Now you might have already seen the full walk-around video on that, but I can't show the cockpit of that aircraft simply because, well, there are certain things in there that, yeah, it's, you know, the plane's in service, you know what I'm saying. So
there you go. That should kill him.
Yeah, that was a hit, I think.
Oh, that's out of ammo.
Oh no, just at the moment. Oh, you get away. You get away today.
These are illusions.
The United States Air Force has held a monopoly on pilot training for decades, but a quiet revolution in the North is shattering that status quo. Sweden has just perfected a decentralized, software-first pipeline that outpaces traditional Western doctrines at a fraction of the cost. Is the era of hardware-heavy dominance officially over? What if the secret to NATO's survival isn't more stealth jets, but a radical shift in how we train the people flying them? While others rely on massive vulnerable airbases, Sweden is proving that Agile Combat Employment and rapid Gripen turnarounds are the real keys to Arctic air parity. This is how data beats raw power. We've been taught that air superiority belongs to the biggest spender, but Sweden is rewriting the rulebook for 2026. By ditching high-cost infrastructure for a sovereign, agile training architecture, they've created a pilot factory that's faster and more resilient than anything in the West. It's time to rethink everything we know about modern aerial warfare. Imagine this, a single fighter jet with a price tag so staggering it could buy entire squadrons of older aircraft. That's the world of the United States Air Force, a world where training a single pilot can cost upwards of $100 million. And the F-35 has become the poster child of this billion-dollar fantasy. But here's the twist. In 2026, this heavy infrastructure model is starting to crack. Massive, centralized air bases, once considered symbols of power, are now glaring vulnerabilities. One well-placed strike or cyber attack could immobilize entire fleets, grounding the very force meant to dominate the skies. Meanwhile, halfway across the globe, Sweden is quietly rewriting the rules. Forget sprawling bases and obscene budgets. Their approach? Agile, low-cost, high IQ pilot training. A system designed to maximize human potential while minimizing financial and strategic exposure. Swedish pilots are trained to think faster, adapt smarter, and operate with precision, challenging the entrenched notion that supremacy requires an endless flow of money. Could it be that the era of the billion-dollar pilot is fading, and that NATO's future superiority might depend less on price tags and more on brains, agility, and strategic foresight? In the old model of air power, a fighter jet belongs on a perfect runway, long, clean, protected, surrounded by hangars, fuel trucks, weapons crews, command centers, and layers of expensive infrastructure. But Sweden asked a dangerous question decades ago. What if the runway disappears? What if the airbase is bombed? What if satellites are watching every hangar? What if drones, cruise missiles, and real-time targeting turn a billion-dollar airfield into a glowing red dot on the enemy's screen? That question created BAS 90, Sweden's Cold War answer to survival. Instead of concentrating jets in one massive base, Sweden built a system where aircraft could scatter across highways, small roads, hidden strips, and forest-side operating points. Modern NATO calls this idea Agile Combat Employment, or ACE, but Sweden had already been living the concept long before it became a buzzword. Recent U.S. Air University analysis describes ACE as a force-wide effort to institutionalize dispersed operations with allies, training, doctrine, logistics, personnel, facilities, and policy all moving together. And this is where the Gripen changes the conversation. The F-35 represents the peak of stealth technology, but it also represents a system that needs heavy sustainment, specialized maintenance, protected infrastructure, and a deep logistical tail. Not always a literal clean room, but a clean room ecosystem. The Gripen was built with a different philosophy. Land fast, hide fast, refuel fast, rearm fast, disappear. Saab says Gripen was designed from the start for dispersed basing, including regular roads, and can operate from narrow road strips with minimal ground support equipment. It can be inspected, refueled, rearmed, and turned around in less than 15 minutes by a small team, 1 technician, and 5 trained conscripts. That is not just engineering, that is strategy. Because in modern war, the most dangerous aircraft may not be the one with the biggest price tag, it may be the one the enemy cannot find. A centralized airbase is powerful, but it is also visible. Satellites see it, drones map it, missiles can reach it, cyber attacks can slow it. And once aircraft, fuel, weapons, and command systems are packed into one location, the enemy does not need to destroy an entire air force. They only need to paralyze its hub. This is the strategic shift Sweden understood early. Do not become a target, become a moving problem.
NATO analysts now describe ACE as essential because modern threats include standoff weapons, open-source intelligence, ballistic and cruise missiles, and faster enemy targeting cycles. The same analysis notes that NATO air power has become more concentrated on fewer airfields, increasing the need for survivable, dispersed operations. This is the ghost wing concept, a squadron that does not sit proudly on a runway waiting to be counted. It breaks apart. It hides in the tree line. It uses roads as runways. It turns civilian geography into military uncertainty. By the time the enemy confirms where it landed, the jet has already refueled, rearmed, launched again, or vanished deeper into the Arctic woods. And here is the real shock. Sweden is not simply offering NATO another fighter jet. Sweden is offering NATO a survival doctrine. After Sweden officially joined NATO on March 7, 2024, its old Cold War airbase logic became part of the alliance's modern northern defense problem: how to fight under missile threat, how to survive under surveillance, and how to keep generating air power after the first strike. The USAF built air superiority around dominance. Sweden built it around disappearance. And in 2026, disappearance may be the more dangerous weapon, because the next war may not be won by the Air Force with the biggest base. It may be won by the Air Force that has no fixed base at all. For most of aviation history, fighter jets were judged by hardware: bigger engines, sharper stealth, longer-range missiles, more expensive sensors. But the next war may not be decided by the aircraft with the strongest metal body. It may be decided by the aircraft that can learn the fastest. And this is where the Gripen E becomes dangerous. Saab did not design Gripen E like a traditional fighter, where every major upgrade gets trapped inside years of testing, certification, bureaucracy, and hardware dependency. Saab built it around a split avionics philosophy, separating flight-critical systems from mission-critical tactical systems. That means updates to sensors, weapons logic, electronic warfare tools, and cockpit applications can be integrated faster without disturbing the aircraft's core flight safety architecture. Saab describes this as split avionics, designed to allow rapid integration and validation of new capabilities. In simple words, traditional fighters behave like locked machines. Gripen E behaves more like a combat operating system. Saab says the Gripen E avionics system can support software updates within hours, while reporting from flight test coverage has described regular software drops during development rather than old-style generational upgrade cycles. That changes everything, because in modern combat, the threat does not wait for your next 5-year upgrade package. A new radar appears, a new missile profile emerges, a new electronic warfare signal is detected, a new drone swarm tactic shows up over the battlefield. The old question was, can your aircraft survive it? The new question is, how fast can your aircraft adapt to it? And this is the real software-first revolution. The Gripen E is not trying to win only by being invisible. It is trying to win by being adaptable. Where older procurement cultures treat aircraft upgrades like construction projects, Sweden treats them more like software releases. Identify the problem, code the response, test it, push it into the mission system, and send the pilot back into the fight with a sharper brain. That is why AI matters here. In June 2025, Saab and Helsing announced that Helsing's AI agent, Centaur, had been integrated into a Gripen E and flown in 3 test flights under Saab's Project Beyond. The first flight took place on May 28, 2025, and Saab described it as a major step toward bringing AI capabilities into military aircraft.
But this is not Hollywood-style killer robot fantasy. The policy-aware point is important. This is about decision support, not removing human responsibility from war. Saab's own Gripen materials describe human-machine collaboration as a system that fuses sensor data, filters it, and presents the pilot with mission-critical information so decisions can be made faster and with less overload. That means the pilot is no longer drowning in raw radar returns, electronic signals, data link messages, and threat warnings. The aircraft becomes a thinking partner. It clusters the chaos. It filters the noise. It highlights the danger. It helps the pilot decide before the enemy even understands the full picture. And this is where Sweden's tech culture enters the battlefield, not as a slogan, as a tempo. The Swedish model is not simply buy the biggest jet. It is build a system that can collect data, share data, update fast, and compress the time between seeing a target and acting on it. That is the heart of the sensor-to-shooter race. The U.S. military's own JADAC-2 concept is built around linking sensors and shooters across domains faster, using AI-enabled networks to accelerate decisions. U.S. Air Force reporting has described ABMS and JADAC-2 as efforts to link sensors to shooters at speed and under threat, while the Department of Defense has described JADAC-2 as connecting any sensor to any shooter, enabled by AI. This is not just about aircraft. This is about latency. In modern air combat, latency kills. A radar detects, a sensor confirms, a network shares, a commander approves, a shooter fires. Every second inside that chain is a chance for the target to move, jam, hide, or strike first.
Gripen E's advantage is that it was designed around the idea that information must move fast, from sensor to cockpit, from aircraft to aircraft, from software update to battlefield effect. Saab says Gripen E's sensors support cross-domain data gathering and fusion, with information analyzed and shared in real time to support continuous information superiority. Now compare that with the traditional heavy fighter modernization model. The F-35 is still an extremely advanced platform, but its Block 4 modernization has faced years of cost growth and schedule delays. The U.S. Government Accountability Office reported in September 2025 that Block 4 was more than $6 billion over original estimates and at least 5 years later than planned. That contrast matters, because if one system needs years to absorb major modernization and another system is built to absorb change faster, the battle is no longer just stealth versus radar. It is software tempo versus bureaucracy. The future fighter pilot may not win because he sees more. He wins because his aircraft understands faster. And Sweden's message to NATO is uncomfortable. Air superiority is no longer only about who has the most expensive jet. It is about who can update the fastest, connect the smartest, and shorten the kill chain before the enemy can react. In a hardware world, Sweden is betting on software. And if that bet works, the next air war may be decided not by the aircraft that looks most advanced on paper, but by the one that can rewrite itself before the battle is over.
When Sweden and Finland officially joined NATO, the alliance didn't just gain 2 new members. It gained an entirely new way of thinking about air power. No longer is dominance measured purely by the number of aircraft or the size of an airbase. Instead, the focus shifts to decentralization, agility, and survivable networks. The Swedish and Finnish doctrine, honed over decades of operating under the constant pressure of proximity to Russia, prioritizes mobility, distributed operations, and rapid decision-making. This distributed pilot model is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Long-range hypersonic missiles, capable of reaching targets across hundreds of kilometers in minutes, have rendered traditional airbase concentration extremely vulnerable. A single missile strike could neutralize thousands of tons of aircraft, fuel, and munitions. By scattering aircraft, operating from highways, forest strips, and small dispersed runways, NATO gains survivable air power. Pilots are no longer sitting ducks in predictable locations. They are moving, hidden, and ready to strike at the tempo of the battlefield. The strategic consequence is profound. NATO can now focus less on raw numbers and more on high-tempo, sovereign data control. Distributed operations rely on real-time intelligence, secure networks, and rapid command cycles. This allows the alliance to project air power across the high north, even under the threat of advanced anti-access systems. In effect, the northern flank has been redefined, from a static line of bases to a dynamic, living network of aircraft, pilots, and data. It's a model where quality of connectedness, speed of decision, and adaptive tactics outweigh the traditional metric of quantity. For NATO, the lesson is clear. The future of northern defense isn't about who can fly the most sorties from the biggest base. It's about who can survive, adapt, and strike first in a domain where every second counts and every location is potentially observed. Air power is no longer about presence. It is about persistence, adaptability, and invisibility. And Sweden's Agile doctrine is showing the way.
Here's the real story the big powers don't want widely discussed. Smaller nations are quietly rewriting the rules of air dominance. For decades, the United States Air Force set the standard. Massive air bases, billion-dollar jets, and training programs that only the wealthiest nations could afford. But the world is changing. A modular, software-driven, and intelligence-centric approach pioneered by Sweden allows even smaller air forces to compete on an equal footing. Sweden's modular training pipeline is a masterclass in efficiency. Instead of locking pilots into rigid programs with years-long timelines, the system trains aviators in agile cycles, integrating mission updates, simulation-based decision-making, and cross-platform interoperability. A pilot today can adapt to new threats within weeks instead of years. Economics plays a key role. While traditional heavy air forces burn billions maintaining infrastructure and updating hardware, Sweden's model leverages software-driven adaptability. By updating avionics, tactics, and networks faster than adversaries, these forces can win the war of attrition without bankrupting the state. Each Gripen, each pilot becomes a force multiplier, smarter, faster, and far more survivable. The verdict is stark. In the 21st century battlespace, air superiority is no longer measured by price tags or aircraft counts. It's measured by agility, decentralization, and the speed at which pilots and systems adapt to new threats. Sweden's model is distinctively Swedish, minimalist, strategic, and human-centric. It proves that a smaller, smarter, software-first force can outperform a larger, hardware-heavy competitor, not by luck, but by design, doctrine, and discipline. For NATO, for Europe, and for any nation watching, the message is clear. The monopoly of expensive air power is over. The blueprint for modern parity has been drawn, and it is agile, distributed, and unmistakably Swedish. Future air superiority isn't bought. It is engineered.